everyone, and welcome back. I hope you had a great day so far, the first part of our 5th InsuResilience Global Partnership Forum. And I certainly hope that you enjoyed the opportunity just now to network and meeting some interesting people. Hopefully you can take these connections forward as well in your work. Well, now we look to our final session for the day, and it is entitled In Conversation with Our Leaders, the Risk Pools in Focus. Here, leaders of the risk pools will reflect on the successes and challenges they face with a special look at the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic. This session will take a look forward, asking what next for the risk pools and what is needed for a strengthened global risk financing architecture which promotes greater resilience building impact. Lots to discuss. But the session will be in the safe hands of Ms. Tuga Alaskary, advisor InsuResilience Secretariat, and her guests are Mr. Leslie Ndolovu, CEO of African Risk Capacity Limited, Mr. Ahulotu Palu, CEO Pacific Catastrophe Risk Insurance Company, Mr. Isaac Anthony, CEO, the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, and Mr. Gary Rinsard, Executive Director and Board Member, Southeast Asia Disaster Risk Insurance Facility. Great panel, I'm sure we all look forward to it. And with this, I would like to hand over to Tuga.
Thank you, Monica. I'm honoured to welcome our distinguished panellists today from the 4 risk pools, and a warm welcome to you, our audience, to this session. I'm really looking forward to this session and this unique opportunity to have a conversation with the risk pool leaders all together. For those of you that attended the Partnership Forum in Madrid in 2019, you'll recall we had the first edition of this event, where we had an engaging dialogue among the leaders of the risk pools. 2 years on, we find that risk management and preparedness is higher up the global political agenda than it has been before, not just for pandemics, but also for climate-related emergencies. This year, while grappling with the unprecedented impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, we witnessed a succession of record-breaking disasters which swept across the globe. This includes the severe flooding in China, Western Central Africa, as well as in Western Europe. We saw heat waves and droughts in North America, and wildfires sweeping and causing mass destruction. And this is just to name a few. As extreme weather events increase in both frequency and cost, strengthening resilience, especially financial resilience, is becoming a policy priority for many countries. Finance to build resilience and to protect people and structures before disaster strikes is one category of much needed finance. The problem is that many countries have limited access to finance for early response. Over the past years, sovereign risk pools have emerged as key mechanisms to enable governments to access insurance. Starting in 2007, the Caribbean Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility, CCRIF, was the first multi-country risk pool and the first insurance instrument to successfully develop parametric policies which were backed both by traditional and capital markets. In 2000 facility, CCRIF was restructured into a segregated portfolio company to facilitate offering new products and expansion into new geographical areas. It is now named CCRIF SBC, operating in the Caribbean and Central America. I am delighted to be joined by Isaac Anthony, who is currently the Chief Executive Officer of CCRIF. He has over 25 years of senior management experience, spanning the areas of public finance, financial sector supervision, economic planning, and disaster risk financing, having held key positions with the government of St. Lucia, including Permanent Secretary for Finance, Economic Affairs, and National Development. Isaac, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you.
Moving to the second risk pool, the African Risk Capacity, which was established in 2012 as a specialized agency of the African Union. ARC Insurance Company Limited was established 2 years later as a financial affiliate of ARC that delivers risk transfer services to African governments. I welcome Leslie Ndolovu. He's the CEO of ARC Limited. He's also the former CEO of AXA Africa Specialty Risks, a Lloyd's of London insurance syndicate. Leslie has extensive international experience spanning 14 years across corporate finance, audit, tax, advisory, insurance, and investment management sectors in several countries, including Bermuda, Singapore, France, and the United Kingdom. Welcome, Leslie. And then moving to the third risk pool, moving to the Pacific for the third risk pool, which was established in 2016, the Pacific Catastrophe Risk Insurance Facility which then became the Pacific Catastrophe Risk Insurance Company, PCRIC. This is owned by the island nations of the Pacific. PCRIC is a dedicated regional provider of specialist disaster risk finance services. I welcome Aholutu Paulo, the CEO of PCRIC. Before joining PCRIC, Lotu was working for the government of Tonga in the Ministry of Finance and Prime Minister's Office. He has also worked at the World Bank, Forum Secretariat, and GIZ. Welcome, Lotu, and thank you for joining us at this very inconvenient time in Fiji.
Thank you.
And to complete our panel, we have the Southeast Asia Disaster Risk Insurance Facility, SEADRIF, which was established in 2018. SEADRIF is a regional platform that provides participating nations with advisory and financial services to increase preparedness, resilience, and cooperation in response to climate and disaster risks. I welcome Gary Rinsard, the Executive Director and Founding Board Member at SEADRIF Insurance Company. In this role, he sets strategic directions and ensures sustainable business performance of the company. Gary has spent most of his career at Steamship Mutual, one of the largest protection and indemnity clubs, mutual insurance associations, where he first started as a lawyer advising on legal issues affecting ship owners, and most recently served as the Chief Executive Officer and Executive Chairman until 2019. A warm welcome to you, Gary.
Thank you, Tuga.
With all our panelists introduced, I am eager to start. Before I do, I have a couple of questions that I'd like to direct to our panelists, but I do in the meantime encourage all of you participating to please use the chat function, and I'll try and direct as many of your questions to the panelists. So to begin with, I first wish to turn to you, Isaac. CCRIF was a pioneer in the space as the first risk pool and has since expanded to operate in Central America. You've also in this time expanded on the products you offer. And so in your view, is there a bigger role you see for risk pools that has not yet been realized?
Thank you, Tuga. And let me take this opportunity to thank the InsuResilience Global Partnership for inviting me to be a member of the panel on this very important session. You know, the short answer to your question, Tuga, is yes. But permit me to provide some context. You know, when CCRIF was established in the year 2007, we were providing coverage for earthquake and tropical cyclone. We have subsequently, you know, added new products, for example, one for the fishery sector, one for the electric utility sector, and so on. And in fact, we do have quite a busy pipeline of projects, including drought, multi-peril agriculture insurance, water. In fact, we're in discussion with the water sector, and potentially a housing product and others as well. As you quite rightly indicated, you know, we have since been restructured into what is called a segregated portfolio company. So that has actually enabled us to expand. So we've been able to, for example, to bring on the Central American countries to be part of CCRIF. Since 2017, we have been aggressively pursuing a scaling up strategy. And we've been able to get countries to cede risk from what was originally $500 million to over, you know, $1 billion. I mean, that is quite significant. Our membership has grown from 16 to 23, and we've been able to add, as I said, additional product. Now, since the inception of CCRIF in 2007, we've made a total of 54 payouts to our members. Well, 54 individual payouts totaling $245 million to 16 members. So it's very clear that the risk pools are in fact achieving their missions. So is there really a bigger role for risk pools that has not been realized? Now, let me say that in the case of CCRIF, when the heads of government in the year 2004, following Hurricane Ivan, decided to approach the World Bank for assistance in developing a facility, it was really intended to be a disaster risk financing mechanism to be able to respond more fully to the very significant financial consequences of the growing incidence, of course, of natural disasters. Now, you know, there was that recognition that at the time insurance was only part of the solution. when CRIF was initially established, the intention was to be able to provide quick liquidity to the governments following a major disaster. But it was never really intended to cover the overwhelming costs associated with rebuilding. In fact, it was intended that CRIF products, along with other financial instruments, would be able to provide the financial resources necessary to help countries respond. And some of those that would include, for example, contingency funds, contingent lines of credits, and so on. Indeed, we see it, but we've been hearing a lot of the appeals being made by governments following a major disaster, that the resources requirement, the resources that are available is simply not enough. We heard it, for example, in 2017 when Dominica was impacted by Hurricanes Maria, country where the losses were put at $1.3 billion. Of course, the payout that they got from CRIF, which was very well received, $20 million within 14 days, but the reality is that it's not enough. The question is then, is there more that risk pools can do to satisfy the needs of the members, even if it means going outside a bit outside of the original remit? We believe we can build on the successes of the pools by introducing other financial mechanisms that would transform them into full-fledged disaster risk financing facility. In other words, it's not just insurance, but doing more. Because clearly there is a void. There is a void that needs to be filled. And I think given the successes that we've had with the risk pools, there is definitely an opportunity for them to do more. So just to give you an example, some of the interventions may very well be, for example, in addition to the insurance instruments that they provide, there could be a regional dedicated reserve mechanism to support the countries, and all of that can be done through CRIF and the other risk pools. There could be a regional CAT bond. One of the things that I'm pleased to say is that we have just started a consultancy to be able to point CRIF in the direction in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of how it can expand. And one of the key things that we've been looking at, for example, is what are the things that can be done, as I said, by going outside of the original mandate to be able to fill that gap that clearly exists. One of the things, again, that we have been doing very successfully, and there's still room for improvement, is the technical assistance program, which is a way of adding to the value proposition that CRIF is already providing. For example, we provide a lot of resources for scholarships, for small grants, in disaster risk management. We do an internship program, and we enter into a lot of MOUs within the region with a whole host of organizations to be able to help build and to strengthen the disaster risk management community. I think there is an opportunity to do a lot more. So there is no question that the risk pools are achieving the mandate, but there is more that can be done. And I think given the success that we have seen from CRIF, from ARC and others, I think there is that opportunity. I actually think it's a very exciting time for those entities and our key stakeholders, including the governments, the donors, and so on, who have the opportunity to work with CRIF and the others to be able to build on the successes and to place them on a firm foundation for developing their role as I would say, development insurance companies. I think I would stop at this point. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaac. It's always so great to talk to you because I feel if I skip a few months, there's always so much else, so many developments and new products that are on the way. And I think what I take away from that is there is a great role to play beyond the current work that the sovereign risk pools are working in, looking at, I think one of the things that is very common among the risk pools is we very often hear that it is being promoted as one solution among a comprehensive disaster risk financing strategy. No one is saying this is going to cover your entire risk. But actually, could there be a role for the risk pools to step in and cover those areas that are not yet perhaps covered? And there remains a protection gap. The other thing that I thought was very interesting, and I want to turn to Lotto actually for a reflection on this. It's very interesting to hear about the journey of CRIF, because we could look at it now and look at all the successes and the different products and the broad geographical coverage, and it's all very inspiring. But you sort of, when you told the story, the first step for you was ensuring that you worked really closely with government to understand, to create that understanding on what you're proposing and why this brings benefits, why this is an appropriate approach for public financial management, why this builds resilience, and so on. So if I could turn to Lotto, looking at the at PCRIC, you've only started, maybe you've started some years after CRIF, and you're in this process where you have a number of products, you have a number of members. What for you, sort of when you look at scaling up, could you share some reflections on what approaches you're taking and what you think is important for you to be able to build those firm foundations, build on your successes, and scale up?
Thank you, Tuga, and good morning to everyone, and thank you also for the invitation for this auspicious gathering. As you said, the company was just established 2016, and it's still in its toddler situations, a very young baby now. And we are looking forward to grow this company to become a mature organization to help the region. But let me say this, risk pool is a new terminology in the region. And based on my consultations with the countries, I form an opinion that lack of technical understanding of risk pool versus traditional insurance is the culprit for slow uptake. This lack of understanding has made my work quite challenging at the outset, to be honest. However, with the support of the technical team, since I joined September last year, we started to develop a technical knowledge products that simply explain the demarcations of risk pool from traditional insurance and circulated widely in the regions. And the launching of the website a few months ago, emergence, the company was established 5 years ago, and just after 5 years, we just established the website for the first time. So, and the experience of so far that I received from within the Pacific and beyond, that I have a strong feeling that it's slightly improved the understanding of our government officials, counterparts, in terms of understanding the demarcations between traditional insurance or insurance per se and risk pooling. With that being said, I realized that risk pools are incredibly powerful tool to achieve more proactive disaster risk management and streamlining donor support after a disaster, and at the same time giving countries more autonomy to ensure post-disaster funding is spent effectively. This is the underlying theory of change we are trying to address. And that is better preparedness and proactive response saves lives and livelihood and makes better use of donor support. In the past months, we have been working hard to grow the visibility of the company and to enhance its relevance by way of articulating the company will support Pacific Island countries' disaster risk finance and insurance priorities, which is based on a scalable solution that premised on 3 key areas, namely scaling up, scaling out, and scaling deep. I'll talk a bit about that later on. So, and through that communications that we had with the countries, we be able to articulate to them a simple way that risk pools are a catalyst that mobilize resources to provide parametric insurance coverage in a speedy payout, as Isaac Anthony alluded to. But really, what risk pools are trying to do is encourage long-term development gains. And this is a situation that is still lacking in the region, is trying to understand, the benefit and the advantage of having this company, and then waiting for a donor community to provide humanitarian assistance to them post-disaster. So there is also a moral hazard attitude here in the regions in terms of just waiting for donor community to provide rather than putting the money aside by paying premium and receive a payout post-disaster if the triggers of the model are being triggered. So one of the lessons that I learned is that insurance protections cannot be considered in isolation from other disaster risk financing tools. The protected risk pools offer is only part of the solution. And countries must develop comprehensive financial strategy to deal with the disaster effectively. We only have 2 products so far. We only have cyclone product and earthquake, which is also includes tsunami. And as you can see, with the limitations that we're having, these 2 products itself, and these 2 products just focus on the South Pacific, while the North is not applicable to them. Most countries in the North Pacific, they are not high risk to cyclones, so they are yet to purchase a insurance policy from us simply because they are not high risk on that particular side of the perils. But at the same time, we are hoping that the Cook Islands government be able to pass the amendment of the law that we submitted to them so that the company can move on, include the Secretariat itself. This is more like following the model that being used by the CCRIF, so that we can also offer non-sovereign products and be able to diversify the existing product that we have, so that we meet the need of the country. But at the same time, with the current product that we have, we also develop a rainfall product that will cover flooding and also drought. So we all know and understand now that resilient, and resilient here in the Pacific, it's more like a very eye-catching narrative. And that has become a dominant framing for policies and programs aiming at reducing vulnerability, the disaster promoting climate change adaptations, and strengthening countries, communities, and individuals' ability to manage their risk. And this is an area that we are trying to tap into the mindset of the Pacific folks, so that they can understand the company will help them support their resilient building efforts, rather than looking at us as more like there's no insurance. So that's the misunderstanding that my folks in the regions are still facing. But we are working hard to improve that understanding, as I alluded to earlier on, so that again, be able to see what we are offering to the market is different from the there's no insurance. I understand that all the risk pools have evolved over time and gone through various iterations of product designing, company structure or governance arrangement, premium support packages, and how they integrate in the regional political architecture. So I mentioned earlier on the confusion and misunderstanding of the difference between risk pool and traditional insurance in the region. So, and to address this, the company has taken actions to frame our own interventions in the regions through the scalable solution that I mentioned. And when I mean scalable solution, we're looking at scaling up in terms of, the company become more like a policy influencer on the national level in terms of influence policy changes, influences policy considerations on the grounds, so that they can look at us in terms of assessing any formulations of their policy. Scaling out in terms of not just focus on public or government arrangement, but to go beyond that, private sectors, other areas, also other sector of the economy, like what the CCRIF is currently undertaking now. So they are going to cover, providing bailouts or coverage to utilities. So we haven't done that, but I'm pretty sure down the road we're gonna head the same way as CCRIF currently experience. So the last one that I wanted to emphasize here is the scaling tip. This is the mindset that we wanted to change. Here in the Pacific is all about being reactive. We just wait till things happen, then we react. So scaling tip is we are using that narrative to see if we can be able to change the mindset from being reactive to become more proactive. So shifting the mentality from where we are just sitting and do nothing right now to become more prepared in terms of putting aside money when it's raining. You can be able to buy an umbrella. Tuga, I think that's what I can say for now, and hopefully I be able to answer your questions correctly.
Absolutely. Scaling up, scaling out, scaling deep. I think that's a very clear message. And I'm seeing a consensus emerge. I think that there's this focus on the need to increase understanding of risk, understanding of where this product fits, how this can help, what kind of public financial management this fits within, and how this creates efficiencies. And then the second theme that I find emerging is this idea of embedding disaster risk financing approaches offered by sovereign risk pools within comprehensive risk management frameworks. I'd like to turn to Leslie to ask about this, but a quick reminder to our audience, do keep your questions coming in. We will be posing as many of them to our speakers as we have time for. So Leslie, in the African risk capacity, you have a very interesting approach. Before a government can take out an insurance policy with ARC, they undertake a one-year capacity building program. An interministerial team is mobilized, and you call it a technical working group, and they cover modules of risk modeling, contingency planning, as well as risk transfer. And through this process, you also undertake quite a dialogue with these governments before they take out insurance. From your experience, and ARC's been around for quite a few years now, what extent do you feel participation in ARC's risk pool is catalyzing improved disaster risk planning more generally? Do you feel that through participation in ARC, not only do governments have this growing recognition of where insurance may fit in, but it might have other benefits for broader, improved public financial management in the face of disaster risks? We appear to have lost Leslie. I don't know if he's appearing. I think hopefully he can rejoin us. But, I will direct my next question. Oh, Leslie, you're back.
Yes, I'm back. I hope that you can hear me and see me.
Loud and clear.
So then, in response to your question, I think what's unique about our approach at ARC, as you mentioned, is this capacity building that we have with governments, because we recognize that in Africa, the governments need much more support. You cannot on day one sell insurance. So we want to build ownership for disaster risk management and financing within the country, so that it's not ARC imposing a solution on the government, but it's the government recognizing that there is a need for ARC. And really, I would also like to just point out the relevance of the theme this year in terms of moving from political ambition to implementation, because around the table for all the risk pools, we now have extensive experience in running these programs. We know that they work. We have a very good idea of what works. So really, I think the success of these has been proven, and now it's at a point where they should scale up. And for ARC, we are really looking at growth. And the rationale for growth is threefold. Firstly, we want to grow in order to be relevant to the needs and the aspirations of Africans. When you look at it, there are close to 700 million Africans that need insurance because they have economic activities that are exposed to extreme weather, and the frequency and severity of weather-related natural disasters is increasing as a result of climate change. Currently at ARC, we're covering about 30 million people per year. Our 5-year ambition is to increase that number to 150, but as I've already said, the need is closer to 700 million, so which means that there is really room to massively scale what we do, so that we are able to have pre-arranged ex-ante financing for most of the African population that needs it. The second reason why we focus on growth of the pool is so that we build scale and diversification. Right? The more countries and the more products you have in your pool, the more diversified you're going to be, and which means the lower your cost of capital is going to be, which means the lower your reinsurance costs are going to be. And since we are structured as a mutual insurance company, we can translate these lower reinsurance costs to our members as lower premiums. And when we have lower premiums, it means that more countries are able to participate in ARC. And then we create this virtuous cycle of much greater participation leading to lower reinsurance premiums, leading to lower premiums, also then driving increased participation. And then the third reason is all of us around the table, I think, recognize that donor financing is still a big component of the sovereign risk pools, but then growth is what will ensure that the pools are financially sustainable for the long run, such that there is a path to exit for the donors, because then the entities shouldn't be supported by donor funding into perpetuity. They should get to a point where they have enough products and clients and interest for them to succeed. And then maybe when I think about scale, there is homework for everyone. I would say that for us around the table, the challenge is to be really demand-led, so that we're starting by understanding what our countries really need, and being able to provide that. It's being solution-oriented already, as Lotu and Isaac have mentioned. It's not just about executing a narrow mandate, it's more about creating holistic solutions for the countries. In Africa, at least for the countries themselves, we need more countries to sign up to the ARC mechanism, because currently we have 35 countries, which is not all the countries in Africa. And then also, as has already been said by my colleagues, insurance exists as part of a national disaster risk management framework. So then the countries also need to have this in mind, so that they can see where the various instruments fit in. And then for the donors and partners that support, what we need is, again, premium subsidies to ensure that we have as many countries.
I don't know. Oh, yes, you're back. Please go ahead.
To ensure that we have as many countries as possible being able to participate in insurance, and then also the capital to carry the risk. And these needs as a catalyst to get the process started up to a point where we achieve escape velocity, and then the pools should be able to stand on their own 2 feet. So a rather long answer to your question, but I really wanted you to have all the elements in terms of the challenges that we face and how we're approaching them. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate that. That is a very good list. And I think we could definitely consolidate what the speakers have said and put it somewhere, because I think this is, next time we have this same discussion, I hope we're not talking about this, we're talking about the next step and how we've taken it forward. On the topic of premium financing, ARC's done some fantastic work in this space. And I would like to just remind those, in case you missed it, there was a very good session today on premium financing. It is recorded, so please do find it later. And then some of the, there's a lot of agreement on the understanding and the working within a comprehensive risk management. But one of the other things that I really like that you said was on the relevance, ensuring that what you're developing actually resonates with your target audience. And with this, I'd like to turn to Gary. So SEADRIF is essentially the new kid on the block in the sense that you've been established in 2019. But you yourself, Gary, come with 40 years of experience in mutual insurance. So what can you tell us in terms of keeping your clients, in this case, in SEADRIF, this would be governments, how do you keep them happy? What is valuable, what have you found to be valuable in your conversations with governments to sort of promote the work that you're doing and bring recognition to its value?
Well, thank you very much, Tuga, and thank you very much for inviting me. And I have to say, I feel a little bit humbled talking alongside these other gentlemen who've got so much more experience. As you say, SEADRIF only started, in fact, it issued its first policy in February of this year, and we haven't yet paid any claims. So we're very much at the foothills. The intention was to operate a pool, 2 countries, Laos and Myanmar, and the first product was a flood insurance policy, Unfortunately, the day after we started, there were some difficulties in Myanmar, which meant that Myanmar couldn't participate. So at the moment, we're only providing a flood risk policy for Laos. Now, as you say, my background is in mutual insurance, and I think one of the hallmarks of mutual insurance is absolute focus and dedication to the needs of the policyholder. And one of the things that strikes me is that we have to strike a balance between the top-down and the bottom-up approaches, if I can put it that way. I think the nature of these products and insurance in general tends to be that somebody has to lead, somebody has to provide the ideas, somebody has to recommend structures and ways of going about the business, and that tends to really lead to sort of a top-down approach. But my experience is that these things, these products, and particularly pools, are never going to work unless it meets the needs of the policyholders. And what I have already, and we're very much in the foothills, as I say, talking to the one country that we're dealing with, it's already clear that there's a kind of a tension between the approach of providing insurance at a high level, and in this case, really, it's the parametric aspects of the insurance. And when you talk to the countries, I think, or the country in is a sovereign. Those flood. The needs of people who are suffering accidents already with great frequency and probably with increasing frequency. Sorry,
we're having some technical problems. I think that the main room can't hear Gary.
Can you hear me now?
Can you hear Gary now?
Can you hear me?
No, I'm afraid not. I can hear you. Actually, funny, I can hear you, but I think that
I can hear Gary.
Yeah. Gary, I think you're back. Could you say?
Okay. Well, I was trying to explain that I think there's a tension between a higher level of insurance for sort of probabilities, in our case, in the region of 1 in 20 and 1 in 8 year floods, and the needs of countries trying to meet the needs of their peoples who are suffering with increasing frequency losses. So in the discussion with the countries, I think a lot of the discussion will be on how we bridge that gap. One of the ways that we're trying to bridge it is by not only offering a parametric insurance, but offering what we call a finite insurance, what some people call a contingency insurance, or it's much more like a traditional indemnity insurance. So we're already operating a kind of a hybrid. And it seems to me that the future is likely to be in the provision of hybrid products so that we can meet the needs of people. But that is going, as the previous speakers have said, it's going to need a lot more resources in order to meet those ends.
Thank you very much. That's very insightful. And again, this strong focus on really listening and trying to understand. So we started, it's quite funny because we started by talking about how important it is to create that understanding among clients, among government clients, but actually equally important is for sovereign risk pools and anyone involved in climate disaster risk finance and insurance in the design of these products is to really understand what solutions they should be coming up with, what need they're trying to serve. And those conversations with government are very valuable. So thank you so much for that. I'll turn to the audience now to take one question. And then I actually have another question for the panel. We have a question here that says, in order to scale up, and as Isaac Anthony has mentioned, how important is it to link consulting risk management to pure insurance solutions? And what can this look like in the future to support vulnerable communities better? So anyone that wants to take that up, if you just give me a nod and then or just jump in.
So
yes, please do.
I'll start if you don't mind. So as I've already mentioned, for me the critical thing is just to be really demand-led and to understand the needs of the member states in this case. So then what we observe in Africa is that you cannot just create an insurance solution in isolation. You need to work through with the countries in terms of developing their risk profile so that the countries understands the risks that they face as a result of the natural disasters, and then developing then a comprehensive national disaster risk management strategy. And only at that point, when there's a nuanced understanding, can you then have the conversation about which risk you want to transfer and which risk you want to retain for the country. So already in our approach, this idea of consulting or risk management is already embedded in the solution, and it's something that we find work extremely well.
That's fantastic. Gary, do you want to come in?
Yes, I mean, I'd very much like to back that up. It seems to me that the two things are going to have to go absolutely hand in hand. I mean, I would have thought that one of the lessons we've all learned from COVID is really the fundamental, I'll say it bluntly, lack of planning. And this is not really to apportion blame to anybody, because I think almost every country would have to admit that their plans have not really stood up. And it seems to me that the risk pools will really, I mean, we need to be talking to the countries to assist them in this risk management area and identifying within their plans where insurance can help. So I think that it's absolutely fundamental.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. If you allow me, I think I'm sure there are many comments on this, but maybe we take another question. So we've got from Ayandef Saha in Rwanda. He's asking, are the facilities engaging with governments and citizens in promoting risk reduction? And how should finance and payouts be targeted to assist the most vulnerable? Isaac, would you like to take that?
I could respond to this. Yeah, in fact, this is a very interesting question. It keeps coming up all the time. Again, as I indicated earlier, one of the things that we are attempting to do as part of enhancing the value proposition that we offer to our members is to look to provide, in a sense, non-insurance services. And we've been able to do that through our technical assistance program. And we have actually entered into several arrangements with not just governments, but also relevant organizations throughout the region. For example, there is the Caribbean Disaster Management Agency called CDMA, where is there's a Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology and so on. But the key point is that in our engagement with our members, I mean, we do provide training so that they understand the full, in a sense, the full spectrum of disaster risk management, and understanding that disaster risk reduction is actually a key element of the whole thing. But we also remind them that there is always need, no matter how much you do in terms of disaster risk reduction, whether it's through mitigation efforts and so on, there will always be that element of residual risk that needs to be managed. And that's where, you know, insurance comes in. So yeah, I mean, we've been doing quite a lot in terms of education, but I must say to you as well that there are many other organizations, certainly within the region, whether it be in the Caribbean or Central America, that has been doing quite a lot of work in that. So one of the issues that we always have to deal with is how do we coordinate our efforts in this regard.
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we're really running out of time. So if it's all right with you, I'll quickly summarize some key points. And then I would like to put out one last question that I'd like you to have the last word and not me. And I'll start with Lotu with that question, because I'm really sorry. I know you have lots to contribute to this topic, but I hope we have another event where we get to speak some more. But what I've heard today is that developing that understanding of what the risk pools are bringing forward is very important. Understanding of risk, understanding of contingency planning and emergency planning, understanding of public financial management. Embedding within comprehensive risk management approaches and strategies. Relevance, I thought this was very insightful to talk about what are we actually trying to do. It's very, very exciting to look at what the risk pools are doing, and some of the models and the approaches are fantastic, and it's very easy to get carried away, but to actually maintain that conversation with government to say, what we're developing, does that actually meet the needs of governments and what they're trying to do with their populations? Diversity, so looking at when we talk about scaling up, having that financial diversification to ensure that the costs could remain low and that the benefits of that could be transferred to the clients who are governments, and then they serve the people. And then also this look to having non-insurance solutions. I think that's very exciting, and it links very well with this comprehensive risk management approach. And I would say watch this space. It'd be very interesting to see what happens in all of your risk pools. Now, one of the things I wanted to end on is the Partnership Forum is very well attended. We've got people from different stakeholder groups. We've got government representatives here, private sector, development partners, civil society, and academia. And they're either watching live or some of them will catch up on this later. There's really an opportunity for us to convey a message here. And there's a lot of hope placed on the risk pools and their potential to scale up and have greater impact on protecting people. In just a few words, 2 to 3 words, one sentence, if someone's watching and saying, I'd really like to see risk pools scale up and have this, fulfill their potential, do more, be more present, what would you ask? What is your call for those interested? It could be directed to the private sector, government, or the whole climate disaster risk finance and insurance group. Lotu, I'd like to start with you.
Thank you, Tuga, and I think that's a very interesting wrap-up that you have stated there, and also the questions that you pose. For me, my experience in the region, as I alluded to earlier on, it's not just going, to the countries and ask for and seek a political willingness. It has to go in hands with some sort of a technical understanding, more like technical training, capacity building, so that they can build the local understanding of the technical. Because when we talk about risk pooling in the regions, they don't understand what's the model that we are using because it's so technical. And that's where the culprit started. Me as a CEO going out to the countries, I have to understand that, and my team to explain it to a wider, larger group so that they can have the better understanding of the model. And then that that will create some sort of a better understanding, and that better understanding that will create some sort of a political willingness or political commitment, because you are talking to the official on the ground. The official, they are the one that provide the advice to the leadership. So that's true. But the message we always articulate to them that the risk pool is not a panacea. It's just a part of the puzzle that help out the countries in terms of reducing the risk for disaster. So don't look at the risk pool as more like this is the heaven on earth. The world great this, we're going to provide everything for you, and they will cover the cost for everything. No, you have to be clear and be articulative when you go to the country so that they can understand what you can offer. And then you are just coming, a part of the whole risk layering approach. Because if you're trying to sell an idea that you're covering the whole thing, that's you're asking for disaster. So at the same time, the strategy that we are using now, Tuga, and this is the message I always convey to the country, that we are not competing. We are not competing with other emerging disaster risk financial instruments coming up from like the KTDO and the World Bank. That has to be articulated in a way for the officials on the ground to understand. But we have to offer that PCRIC is an unique company, unique arrangements to help them diversify their financing strategy, so to be able to manage the risk in terms of disaster. So that's what I wanted to do, to say that. But at the same time,
it's a great message. So basically, work with us. This is not a competition. This is one tool that could really enhance a comprehensive risk management strategy. I really appreciate that.
I wanted to end up with the non-insurance bit of it, because we just launched an intensive program with the University of the South Pacific, and honestly, more than 2,000 students were attended. They never heard of PCRIC exist in the region, but these are local people. These are people in the region, so we'd be able to use that as more like an avenue to create regional champion or national champion, because these are future leaders. So when they go back to the country, they can be able to help. We are yet to be able to do what Isaac, Anthony, and the CCRIF are currently undertaking in the non-insurance side. But we are working. Hopefully, in the future, we can be able to pick up things and offer the countries. Thank you, Tuga.
That sounds great, and I wish you all the best. Isaac, could you we're a bit over time, so could you keep it to a very short sentence? What is your ask of people watching? How can they complement and support your work?
Thank you. I'll keep it short. For basically to look at the risk pools as not regular insurance companies, but as development insurance companies, and companies that are providing not just insurance solutions, but also helping to respond to the development prospects of member countries. So I think once it is viewed in that particular context, obviously we start looking at CCRIF and ARC and so on, in a different way in terms of the role, the significant role that it can play in developing disaster risk management and disaster risk financing in our respective regions.
Thank you so much. And Gary, are you able to very quickly give us your ask to the audience?
Very quickly. I would say to everybody, act with great urgency. I think we're in grave danger of talking too much and not doing enough. We all need to speed up tremendously.
Great, that's great. Strong message there. And last but by no means least, Leslie.
Walk the talk.
Leslie, can you unmute? No. Oh no. What we'll do is we'll make sure that your message appears on our Twitter. We'll put an ask from Leslie, nice and powerful. I'd like to thank you all for sharing your insights. I've certainly learned a lot. And the last time we ran this session, at the end of it, Isaac asked us to maintain this dialogue. He asked the Secretariat to keep this dialogue alive. It is very valuable and useful. And we failed because COVID happened and we never had a meeting since in person. But since then, we've learned how to have these meetings virtually. And this is my commitment from the InsuResilience Secretariat. We learned so much through this. I think our participants have learned a lot through this. And what you're doing is fascinating in the sovereign risk pools. And we will commit to keeping this dialogue alive over the coming year and increasing these exchanges and seeing how we could really make that scale up a reality. So thank you all for your time. Thank you to the participants for watching. And back to you, Monica.
Well, thank you so much, Tuga, and of course your absolutely fantastic panel. What a way to end day one of this InsuResilience Global Partnership Forum. As I promised at the beginning, it's been a very busy day with lots of content, plenty to think and talk about, moving from political ambition to implementation of CCRIF, accessibility, affordability, sustainability, and of course, how important it is that we all work together. At this point, by the way, apologies for some technical glitches here and there, but overall, I have to say, for a digital conference that goes all around the world, I think it worked fairly well. And of course, we have another day coming up. Now, in the meantime, in whatever time zone you're in right now, maybe you want to continue the discussions because you're so inspired. And of course, I can invite you now to visit the Risk Talk, where you can either place a question, or you can answer one as an expert. Anyway, you can spend time there engaged with others. Just be aware that in about 10.5 hours from now, that would be 7:30 a.m. Central European Time, we meet again for day 2 of the InsuResilience Global Partnership Forum. Tomorrow morning, you'll be welcomed by Astrid Zwick and the 3rd regional session, Pacific Island and Asia. I will be back to guide you through another exciting conference day as well, with a final leaders dialogue on inclusive insurance and a series of breakout sessions. So you will be very, very busy. Make sure you get a good night's sleep. I will see you tomorrow. Until then, take care.